right, does anybody have any questions about anything that you've heard here today? Anybody? I'll bring the microphone to you. Not one person. All right, well, we heard some wonderful things here tonight, not least of which was to hear a Republican say that Obama's getting the job done, and a Democrat saying that he's not getting it done. A radical Democrat at that. You want?
Well, I have a question.
Oh, sure.
But it's really about. Didn't hear anybody mention it. I was kind of wondering if anyone would about one of the real problems about energy is. Well, they mentioned it as a sideway. For instance, they're saying everyone in the world wants to live like we do. Our problem is a lot of our problem is consumption. How much we consume, we consume, and how little we conserve. So a lot of our energy problem is a problem of consumption and conservation. And the second thing I was listening for was what environmental impact do all of these different technologies have? I know it's not the same as fossil fuels, but it's not this panacea, it works, it's going to solve all of our problems, everything's great. There's an impact, and I'm kind of curious what it is and how it...
All right, let me try to get some answers for you then. Solar, it's no different.
I can answer the first one. The U.S. right now is consuming probably 30% more than what's being generated. So it's a constant... You're falling behind all the time.
Right.
Now, as far as what the impact is on solar, in actual fact, it's the opposite. With the carbon that's being created by the fossil, we offset those, as you know, with solar. Okay, but what we would create from space, if you think about it, it would be zero.
What about the station that receives it on the ground?
The station that receives it is a rectangle. Actually, it's almost like a greenhouse. If you look at it, it's wire mesh that looks like a giant greenhouse. If anything, there are actually applications for growing, farming, grazing can actually be done underneath those rectennas. The rectennas are probably about, just depending on the size, it could be 1 kilometer wide in diameter. But there would be zero.
It's pretty big.
So you're, yeah. and that's not one of the larger ones.
Do you have a card or a website?
Sure.
We have some cards.
How about for natural gas? What are the ecological ramifications of natural gas as opposed to...
If anybody wants some technical data that complements the California Air Resources Board, I've got a matrix here. Basically, your E10, your biofuels that you can buy today from corn give you about a 3% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Compressed natural gas gives you a 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions at a much lower cost. You go to cellulosic ethanol, then you're starting to see some significantly better reductions than that, down to perhaps 50% reduction. And these are life cycle emissions. And the problem with the biofuels is that you have a lot of scientific uncertainty today about what's the impact of clearing the forest, the land use changes, turning the pasture into a trophy field or something like that. So these are not yet resolved. They're going to be debated hotly for the next several years. But the point is that you can do things today that do give you anywhere from 5 to a 30% reduction at basically lower cost, which is just the opposite of what you hear our opposition in Washington talking about. They say this carbon tax is going to bankrupt the economy. I say it's just the opposite. It's going to actually create jobs and reduce consumer costs.
Let me ask you 2 quick questions. As a complementary fuel, how many years of domestic supply of natural gas would exist?
With the unconventional drilling techniques that have come out, which have to be done in ways that comply with the Safe Drinking Water Act, I might add.
Right.
And that needs to be turned around. That's one of the Cheney did in the 2005 Energy Act. He exempted some of the drilling from the Clean Water Act or the Drinking Water Act. That's wrong. That needs to be fixed. But the U.S., if we can develop the Marcellus Shale and the Barnett and the Hyattsville and all the other shales the way they've been developed for the last 5 years, we've got 125 years supply. So this gives us the breathing space, the time that you need to begin this process of transition. And this glut of gas, this use of natural gas is not just in the United States. It's in Europe. It's in the Soviet Union. It's everywhere. There is a we have is we have to use it wisely. The thing that I'm afraid of that's going to come out of the Congress's energy bill, frankly, is that in our rush to get rid of coal, the utilities are going to take the lowest path of least resistance, and the electric utilities are not going to go to solar in a big way. They're not going to go to wind. They're going to go to natural gas. And you're going to see a replay of what happened in 1989, 1991 with the peaking turbines. And there's going to be a spike in the price of gas, and then it'll come back down again. But all this is going to be because the electric utilities have finally got religion, and they're going to clean up, get rid of these dirty coal plants, but they're only going to do a halfway job.
You may not have an answer to the second question, but can you tell us why you believe the Obama administration or Cho when they pick and choose, why didn't they pick natural gas? I mean, you certainly have a good communicator out there in
T. Boone Pickens, swift-voted John Kerry.
That's why?
He was the financier.
I know, but Kerry still met with him. You know?
Well, I understand that, but he swift-voted me, too, for that matter. But T. Boone is not talking environmental. He's not talking climate change. He's not talking the same language that the Center for American Progress and other energy advisors to the Obama administration are talking. I've talked to these folks. I've talked to Joe Romm and others. And Joe Romm hates hydrogen. He thinks it's a boondoggle. Well, why? Because it has the word nuclear in front of it. You can make hydrogen from nuclear energy. And because Bush was supporting hydrogen, therefore there's a knee-jerk no hydrogen response from the other side, which is crazy. We need performance standards that are based on life cycle environmental impacts, the exact question you asked. And that's what the state of California is doing with the low carbon fuel standard. That's what EPA has finally got approval from the Supreme Court to also do, which is set a low carbon fuel standard for the country. So there are some things happening that are going to turn this whole thing around very quickly, but we still need to get more federal leadership for people to understand that, you know, when Obama gives a speech, he talks about electric vehicles. He doesn't say natural gas vehicles. And why he does that, I think it's politics. I just think that he's not listening to his advisors are basically saying, well, okay, there was a debate about drilling for oil off of Florida, okay, Southwest Florida. A year ago, some of the Florida advocates of that showed up at the Florida Natural Gas annual meeting and said, we want your support for drilling within 3 miles of the Florida coast. And a lot of these gas executives with your local gas utility were sitting there shaking their heads saying, we don't want to drill for oil. We're in the natural gas business. And we don't need to drill off of Florida to get oil and gas, which they're mixed in the ground. Then we can get all the gas we need without messing around with the Florida beaches. But when people say oil, they always say oil and gas, and in politics, it's soundbite, city. You get complicated.
You're telling me.
You get complicated, and you don't win elections. I didn't win my election. I got 41% of the vote, but I didn't win the election because I couldn't get my message out. The public wasn't ready. The public is now ready. This oil spill changes the whole dynamic. And I heard Al Hunt on Bloomberg News last night with Charlie Rose saying he doesn't think that Obama should go out and push the energy package tonight in his speech at 8 o'clock because it's a loser. I think just the opposite. This opens the door for the kind of paradigm shift that we have to have. And it'll work now to save people money now. Thanks.
All right. Are there any other questions?
His question really is a very important question, that everything has environmental impact. And often it's overlooked that muscle-powered transportation has a much, much higher environmental impact than fuel-based transportation does.
Why? Because the person has to eat?
Yes. If you consider making a 1,000-mile trip, what it would take, the weeks that it would take to walk, a bicycle has much less environmental impact, and it pays off very quickly. I did a spreadsheet. If anybody is interested in it, I'll email it to them, that even if you don't value your time at all, if you value your time, it's no question, even at $1 an hour.
Well, I value my time, and I'm sure